Hello everyone, I hope all of you are doing great and staying safe. On behalf of Biopetrol, Arab Oil and Gas Academy and SPE Egypt section, I'd like to welcome you to our last webinar about machine learning fundamentals and introduction to Python. This course consists of 4 webinars, 4 quizzes, and a final exam which will be conducted at 2 p.m. and 8 p.m. on Wednesday and at 2 a.m. on Thursday, all in Egypt time. So please choose one of the timings and solve your exam. My name is Selma Rashidi. My colleague Asma Shandi and I will be the moderators for today's session. We are petroleum engineers. We earned our bachelor's degree from the American University of Ras Al Khaimah. Our lecture today will be delivered by a very special and knowledgeable guest, Mr. Belyadi. He's a senior data scientist and engineer at Vine Oil and Gas. He's the founder and CEO of Intelligence, focused on providing artificial intelligence in-house training and solutions. He served as a faculty member at multiple universities, including West Virginia University, Marietta College, and St. Francis University, where he taught data analytics, natural gas engineering, enhanced oil recovery, and hydraulic fracture stimulation design. Mr. Belyadi has over 10 years of experience working in various conventional and unconventional reservoirs across the world. He has worked on various machine learning projects and held short courses across various universities, organizations, and the Department of Energy. He is the primary author of Hydraulic Fracturing in Unconventional Reservoirs, first and second editions, and he is the author of Machine Learning Guide for Oil and Gas using Python. He has authored and co-authored several SPE papers. He holds his bachelor's and master's degrees both in petroleum and natural gas engineering from West Virginia University. So basically, he's a living legend. Please make the most out of this lecture. If you have any question, please drop them in the Q&A box. And Mr. Belyadi, we're so honored to have you today, and the mic is yours.
Thank you, Selma. I appreciate it. And welcome back, everybody. So as we discussed last class, we went through the process of downloading Anaconda. And in this class, I'm going to just go through some of the fundamentals of, just setting up your Python project and how you can actually go through that process. So with that being said, I'm just going to go right into Python and start showing you guys some examples and as far as how you can set up your project. So when you downloaded Anaconda, as I said, you have a lot of these libraries, Python libraries, already pre-installed in Python now. So you don't have to go into your Anaconda prompt and do pip install, this library and pip install that library, because they have all been pre-installed already. So what I want you to do, if you can either follow along with me if you have a computer, just go ahead and type in Jupyter, and then this icon. Can you guys see my start window? Can somebody just verify that? Okay, I assume you guys can. So just type in Jupyter, and then you can see this Jupyter notebook. Just click on it. It takes a minute, and then you'll see the screen pop up. Okay, so you can see here, it has your desktop, your OneDrive, your documents, all of these things. Okay, so what I want you to do next is to go ahead into your desktop or wherever you would like to. In this case, I've created a folder called Biopetrol short course on my desktop. Okay, and what I want you to do is to click on the right hand side. You see this new here. Click on that, and then click on Python 3. Okay, then it will open up a blank Python page where you can start your coding. Okay, so going back, you just type in Anaconda, you just type in Jupyter in your start menu, and then you just click on that, and it will bring up this main page here, and then you just browse into a folder you can create. And I created a folder called Biopetrol short course just for this illustration. And then as soon as you go to new and create Python and click on Python 3, it will generate this untitled IPYNB file. So Jupyter notebook files, they all have an extension called .IPYNB, okay, as you can see here. So now you can go back to the next page right here, and you can change the title. For example, let's just call it class example, okay? You can, here we go. So when you change it here, if you go back to the main drive, you can see the class example right here, class example.ipynb file. So going back here, that's where you start typing, and you have a lot of functions here. Okay, so we're going to go through some of the like the basic ones. So let's start off with just some basic math here, just to show you how it's done. So let's just say I want to do 2 times 2. Okay, to run this line of code, you can do Shift Enter. Shift Enter. When you do Shift Enter, it gives you the output. Here we go. Output 1 is equal to 4. Let's make it, let's do, for example, 3 times 18. Do Shift Enter. Here we go. So if you keep clicking Shift Enter, it just keeps adding more rows, you know, into your database. What you can do, you can hit Escape now. When you hit Escape, if you look at this mouse here, like it shows that you can type here, right? If you hit Escape, it goes away into, you know, into kind of a different mode, you know. And if you click on DD, D as in Delta, twice, the DD keyword twice, it deletes those rows. You can DD. So hit the D keyword twice while you're on this, you know, you're on a escape mode. DD. You can delete these columns. As I said, to add more, you can do Shift Enter, or you can do even Alt Enter as well. Alt Enter will do the same thing. What I can do, I can add a short key, like all the short keys that would work within Jupyter Notebook, and add that as a slide and send it to you guys as well. That way you guys have that information. So Python like saves it automatically. You can always do Control S, you know, if you want to save it immediately. But it does save it like periodically, you know, like as soon as you type in, it does save your project. So if you close out of this and open it, it would have all the latest and greatest. But if you want to make sure that everything was saved last second, just do Control S, and that will save everything. Or you can do File, and then you know, save it as a different project. You can make a copy of this project. You can make a copy and name it differently. If you have, you know, written 100 lines of code and you want to create the exact same copy, just do File and then do Make a Copy. You can do that. We can always rename it. And then here you also have inserts. So you can say insert cell above or insert cell below. If you insert cell above, it would insert a cell right above, you know, where you said like to insert a cell. You can just click on DD to delete that, like that row. What else I wanted to cover here? You can do insert cell below. There's another function that is very useful. If you have a lot of, if you have, let's just say 200 lines, like to run these 200 lines, when you start Jupyter Notebook, you have to go through each line and do Shift Enter, Shift Enter, Shift Enter, Shift Enter, Shift Enter, right? So that takes a lot of manual work. And instead of doing that, what you can do is just hit kernel and do restart and run all. When you do restart and run all, it says, are you sure you want to restart the current kernel and re-execute the whole notebook? All variables and outputs will be lost. So you just say restart and run cells. So it starts from the top and it goes to the bottom. It ran very quickly because we're not doing anything, you know, mathematically heavy computational, you know. So now what you can do is, let's go ahead and do, let's say 5 minus 5. Here we go. Let's go ahead and do 8 plus 18. I'm sorry. Let's go ahead and do 8 plus 18. Do shift enter. Let's do 2 divided by 4. So the division can be done like this. 2 divided by 4. You got 0.5. Let's also do remainder. So if you want to find the remainder between 9 and 3, so 9 divided by 9% 3, that would give you the remainder of that. So the remainder of 9 divided by 3 is going to be 0, right? The remainder of 10% 3 is going to be 1, right? You have, if you divide 10 divided by 3, your remainder is going to be 1. You can also do more, you know, let's just say 3 times 4 plus 10 times 11, or 10 times 12. Run that. You can do arguments like that. You can also assign variables. Let's just say I'm going to do x is equal to 4, y is equal to 9, and I'm going to say z is equal to x times y. Okay, if you run this, the output was nothing. So if you want to see the output, you just type in z, which is the z variable you just created. So you can see here 4 times 9, which is x times y here, is equal to 36. Okay, so let's create some more lines here, and let's go back and say, how about a is equal to, let's just say, I love data science. Data science. Okay, here's basically to put, you know, if it's like a string, you got to put that within a single quote or double quote mark. If you run this and type in A, it gives you I love data science, but it has this single quote in there, right? So to get rid of the single quote, you can do print A, and here we go. It printed what you know, like the full string that you put in under A, and that is I love data science. Okay, so now these were just the very basics, you know, so let's just go a little bit more advanced and do, for example, lists. So if I do list, you can always type in list and then select the whole thing and go here and say this is a heading, for example, and say okay. Oops. Do okay, and then do shift enter. See, it created like a kind of a heading for that project, and that's what makes Jupyter Notebook very powerful. You can always leave, you can always do, you know, a pound and then leave, this is the list section. This is the list section. And when you run it, Python just looks at it as like comment, you know, so it doesn't really, you know, as long as you have a pound like in there, it will run that line of code, you know, as comment, like basically, you know. But it's nice to have this. It's nice to, for example, go here and just, let's just say I want to make this a like a heading. So you can like select it, go here and do heading, and then say okay, and then here we go. So this is a list section, for example. So it makes it kind of nice for, you know, if you're trying to go through your Python code with somebody for presentation purposes, you can simply pull up your Jupyter Notebook and go through that. And that's why I like Jupyter Notebook in general, because you can, you know, pull up your notebook in a meeting and just go through, you know, different types of different lines of code that you have written like with the audience actually. So now to create a list, let's just say you want to say A is equal to create a list, you have to use the bracket. So let's just say 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay. So let's run that. So you can see here, when you run it, your output is nothing because everything is still under A. So if you want to see your output, just type in A is equal to 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? Let's say you want to append, you know, another keyword to your list. So let's just say A dot append. You can use the append, you know, function, and then do, I want to add the keyword D to my numbers above. So when you do that, and then type in A, so now you have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then it appended the keyword, in this case D, as you asked it to. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then you got D. So now if you're trying to get, let's just say you want the first number, you want the number 8 in this case. Okay, you want to grab number 8 in this case. How would you do that? So indexing in Python starts with 0. So to grab number 8, you have to type in, a bracket, open and close bracket, and then you got to do 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So type in 4. So it's index number 4. When you type it in and hit enter, see, now it just gives you, index number 4 in this list. So you had 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and D, and you were interested in just grabbing this last, this number 8 out of this whole list. And you just type in A, open and close bracket, then you do 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Type in 4, and it gives you 8. Okay, so now, what about you want to grab number 4? If you want to grab this number here, 4, you can do A bracket, and then put, since 4 is the first index in this list, you have to put in 0. Here we go. You put in A0, and it gave you number 4. What about if you want to do, for example, let's just say you want to do all of the list up until the 4th index. So you want to do 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay, so let's do A. Okay, and let's do all of the list. So you can put colon, and then put index number 4. So what this does, it gives you index number 0, 1, 2, 3, and it excludes the number 4, like the 4th index. So it's going to spit out 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So if I run this, I'm sorry, it's going to get spit out 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's going to give you index 0, which is 4, index 1, which is 5, index 2, which is 6, and index 3, which is 7. So it excluded the 4th one. If you want to include the 4th one, just go to 5. So now it went from 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay. So let's go back to 4 here. So this is just one way to get, using colon is one way to go from here all the way to a certain extent. And then if you want to get, for example, you want to just say you want to start with, I'm going to do A bracket, I'm going to do 2 and then colon. So what this does, it goes into 0, 1, 2. So it starts with 6 and then it goes all the way to the end. So it goes 0, 1, 2, starts with 6, and then it goes, when you put colon, you're basically saying give me the remaining piece as well. So it's going to give you 6. So 0, 1, 2 starts with 6, 6, 7, 8, and D. 6, 7, 8, and D. Again, we're just going through the basics of list, and this is, as I said, this is just some of the basic fundamentals, and I can cover just the basics like today because the time is limited and I only have an hour, but these are just the fundamentals of using list. And there's another important one. So if you just type in A, for example, just type in A. Remember, it gives you the original one plus the appended letter D. So you have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then D. You can do let's just say A bracket. If you're interested in getting the last letter, which is D here, you can do A minus 1, and that goes to the very end and grabs the last one. So here we go. If you do A minus 1, it would grab this D letter from this. Okay. if you do A1, if you remember, this is your list here. So 0 and 1. So that's how you got the 5 here. So you remember indexing, just remember one thing you got to remember today is that indexing in Python starts with 0. And like if you're used to other programming languages, it might be a little bit confusing. But once you get a hold of it, it gets pretty natural, So just remember, indexing in Python starts with 0. So if you're going to count from 0, 1, 2, and so on and so forth. Okay. So now, what if you want to do? Let's just say you want to replace index 0 with like a word. Let's just say A. You want to replace index 0 in the above list with what? Let's just call it new. Okay. And then let's just do A now. So now it replaced, if you remember what I did here, it replaced number 4, which was index 0, with new. So you have new, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then D. Okay. So it replaced that. What if you want to create let's do a nested list. Let's do a nested list. Nested, and I'm going to do list. Okay. Nested list, let's just say 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. 7 and 8. And then also let's actually do 4, 6, 7, and 8. 4, 6, 7, and 8. And let's also do 2, 3, and 4. So let's do another bracket inside of that. Then do 2, 3, and 4. Okay. So if I run this nested list, if I just type in nested, by the way, one keyword in Jupyter here, you can hit tab. If you hit tab, it would auto-complete the rest of it for you. So if you assign big names, like in Python, you don't have to type in nested list, from scratch, which would take you some time. You can type in the first couple words, then hit tab, and then it will auto-complete that for you. Just make sure you have run it, you have run that, that line of code above it for Python to recognize that it has already been run. So yeah, again, you do nested, NE, hit tab, and it would auto-complete it for you. If you do nested list, you can see here, it gave you 4, 6, 7, 8, 2, 3, 4. So you have bracket inside of another bracket. This is why it's called a nested list. Okay. So let's say you're interested in obtaining number 4. You can do nested list. This, like, I guess the first number 4. So nested list, tab, then do bracket. This is index 0, right? So you can type in 0. Here we go. So you got your 4. What about if you're interested in obtaining this bracket, like the second bracket? So as you can see, the second bracket, you can do 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So the second bracket is on the 4th, looking on the 4th index. So you can do nested list, and do bracket, and then type in 4. So now it gave you only this guy here, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. Now, what if you say, Haas, I'm interested in this number 4 here. So first off, you have to think about how can you get to this bracket, which we did right here. We said nested list 4, then we type in 2, 3, and 4. If you want to get to this number 4, you can do 0, 1, and 2. So you can actually add. Let me copy and paste this right below here. So this line of code would get you 2, 3, and 4, right? If you're interested in number 4, you can do 0, 1, and 2. So what you can do here, add another bracket and call it 2. Here we go. So you can have, one bracket, which is 4, and another bracket, which is 2, and that will give you number 4, which is inside the second list basically. So so far, like, we've covered that. So what about, let's just say, if you want to do nested list, I'm going to hit tab again and do 4, okay, which gives you like this guy here, 2, 3, and 4. You also want to add, let's just say 0 all the way through 2. So when you run this, it gives you indexes, 0, 1, and excluding the third index. So if you go here, you have 2, 3. So 2 is index 0, 3 is index 1, and then it excluded number 4 because you have 0 through 2. You could have also done this. It's the same thing. If you put in 0 here, you can put in 0. Or if you remove 0, it's the exact same thing. So when you just put, blank colon 2, it just says that, take me from all of the stuff until the second index. Just to make it simpler, you can also add, I want it from index 0 to 2. So it means index 0 and 1, and it will exclude the second index, which it did right here. So it's the same line of code, just different way of writing. And I think if you get confused about this colon, you can always add a 0, just to make it simpler for you to understand you're getting from here to here. Okay. So now let's do another one. Let's call it nested list 2. Nested list 2. Okay, nested list 2 is equal to, let's do 9, 10, 11, 12, 10, 11, and 12. And let's also do another nested list, call it machine, and then comma, learning, like that. Okay, if you run this, type in nested list. So if I hit tab now, see, it gave me the 2 options now. Before it was just 1 option, right? But now I have nested list, I have nested list 2. You're interested in the second one, right? So hit enter, shift enter. Here we go. You got 9, 10, 11, 12, machine and learning. Okay. So now if you're interested in obtaining learning from this, so as I said, first you got to get to this second, list. So it's going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, and it's going to be under the 4th index again, 4th index. So you're going to do nested list, tab, and I'm going to do 4. If you're interested in learning, which is the second word here, it's going to be bracket, and you're going to do index 0, index 1. So you're going to type in 1. Here we go. It just spit out index number 1 for you. So far we've covered the very, very basics of list, basically list and nested list, and how you can grab a number inside a list. Okay. And by the way, this is the fundamentals of Python, right? To get into more advanced topics, you first have to understand the fundamentals, which might seem a little bit boring, especially if you guys are programmers. Some of you guys might be programmers, might seem very boring, but you have to first understand the fundamentals. So once you get to more advanced topics, once you start digging into machine learning and deploying your machine learning models using scikit-learn, TensorFlow, those kinds of things, you have to have a basic understanding of what how you can write different functions, how you can manipulate the data, and so on and so forth. So that's why these are very important. Any Python class that you take will have to cover the basic fundamentals, unless that was an advanced Python class, which doesn't cover that. So now let's go ahead and talk about dictionaries. Dictionary, and I'm going to just do Control A here, and then select heading. Say OK. do shift enter. Here we go. So I created a heading called dictionary. So dictionary, use a squiggly bracket, and you can use this squiggly bracket here. If you do shift and then use the bracket, it would give you that. So if you do shift bracket, it would give you the squiggly bracket. So let's just say you're interested in, let's just call this AI. As I said before, machine learning is a subset of AI. So let's do that. So machine learning is a subset of AI. And also let's do machine learning. And then let's just do ANN is one type of machine learning algorithm, right? So I'm going to type in ANN. Okay. So if I do N, here we go. So I have machine learning AI. ANN is a type of machine learning. So you can do N bracket and then do AI, for example, in this case. And it will spit out machine learning for you. Or you can do N bracket machine learning and put it in single quote. And here we go. It will spit out ANN for you. Again, this is just the very basics of dictionaries, you know, just due to time. I don't want to spend too much time on dictionaries. Let's also go and talk about like Boolean. Boolean, let's do code, do heading, and then do OK. And then do shift enter. So Boolean, you can do true or false, right? True or false. So and we're gonna come back to Boolean in a minute. But let's talk about tuples. I think tuples is one thing that you hear a lot when people talk about Python. So tuples is actually a very interesting concept, and I'm going to first make it a heading and do shift enter to run that. So I'm going to type this in actually. The main difference between a tuple, again, I'm writing a comment here because I put pound here. Okay, the main difference between a tuple and a list, which we just covered, is that tuples do not accept item assignments. And this is very important, by the way. And I'll show you what that means in a minute, okay? Just remember that the main difference between a tuple and a list, in Python language, of course, is that tuples do not accept item assignments. Do not accept item assignments. And let's go over an example, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So to create a tuple, instead of using bracket like you use for list, you would use parentheses. So parentheses 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. Again, you're not using, like in list, you would use a bracket, right? You would use bracket, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then if you type in M, if you type in M here, this is a list. Okay. So we're not talking about a list here. We're talking about a tuple. So in tuple, what you have to do is you have to use parentheses. And let's just do 1, 2. Let's make it as simple as possible. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. So if you're interested in index 0, which is 1, you can do M bracket 0. And if you run this, it would give you index number 0, which is 1 here, right? What if you're interested in 0 to 2? So let's do M bracket 0 to 2. It just means it's going to cover index 0 and 1. So it's going to be index 0, which is 1, and index 1, which is 2. That's why you have 1 and 2 in this case. What if you want to get number 4 in this case? You can do 0, 1, 2, and 3. So you can do M 3. Here we go. You got number 4. Now, if you remember, in the under list, I could assign an item. I could, say, replace number 0, replace index 0 with this letter or with this number. But here, if I try to do the same thing, if I do m, if I say m bracket and put 0, and I'm going to say m is equal to, for example, I'm going to say replace index 0, which is this number 1 right here, right, with machine learning, for example. Okay, I'm going to give you a heads up. This is going to result in error. And the reason for that is, so if I run this, see, tuple object does not support item assignments. See this? And that's exactly what I said here. The main difference between a tuple and a list is that tuples do not accept item assignments. And I showed it to you here in practice. So if I wanted to replace, for example, index 0, which is number 1 in this case, if I wanted to replace index 0 with machine learning, which is what I would do in a list, if I did that, it would not work. It would not run. Okay. So now, just to show you, we've run all this, we've done all of this, right? Let's just say you come back to this, a couple of days from now. And instead of going here and doing shift enter, shift enter, shift enter, you can do that, by the way, just like what I'm doing right now. Shift enter, which would take you some time, right? Especially if you have a lot of code. You can go here, do kernel, and then do restart and run all. Then restart and run all. Here we go. When you see a star, again, we're doing very simple math here, so the star wouldn't last long. But when you see a line and then star, it just means that line of code is still running. When you do different algorithms, when you go into the different machine learning algorithms, some algorithms take some time to run, so you always see a little star here. And instead of line 47, like in this case, you would have seen line and then star. Okay, that means that line of code is running. But in this case, we're doing simple math here, so it just runs instantaneously. So now, as far as let's do comparison operators. Let's do comparison operators, and then we'll go into some pandas a little bit. I want to cover pandas a little bit, and how to import and export data within pandas. But as I said, there are so many. I mean, this is usually a 5-day short course that I go through all the fundamentals of Python, all the visualization libraries, and I go into all the machine learning libraries. And so that's what we did in that, like in the book that we published. We decided to put everything from start to finish. Here are all the fundamentals of Python, and then you go into here's the math behind every single algorithm, and then here's an example as far as how you can apply this algorithm within the oil and gas industry, an oil and gas related example. So that's what we did in that machine learning guide for oil and gas using Python. That was the entire goal of that book, to make it simple, to provide a step-by-step workflow, starting from scratch, like what I'm doing right now, and then building on top of that, and eventually showing you a lot of examples. But also we cover like the math behind each algorithm in very good detail. So you have an understanding of what is happening behind the scene, and not just looking at just running a bunch of libraries. Okay. So comparison operators. Let's do comparison operators. Select it and do heading. Do OK. So comparison operators, let's do, for example, let's come here and say 10 is bigger than 50. If I type in that, Python would result in false, because 10 is not bigger than 50. So it's going to give you a false. What about 100 is bigger than 50? Well, Python is going to say it is true. Okay. What about 10 is bigger or equal to 10? Well, 10 is equal to 10, so it's going to give you a true answer. What if 1 is less than or equal to 5? Okay. Again, 1 is less than 5, so it's going to be true, right? Now, if you want to say something is equal to something, you can do 50 is equal to 50. Okay, 50 equal to 50. If you do 50 is equal to 50, it gives you a syntax error. Okay, so remember in Python you have to do equal sign twice. 50 is 50 equal to 50. To do that, you have to put 50 equal twice to 50, and then it will work. So 50 is equal to 50. It is true. Okay. What about you want to do a string? Is machine learning equal to AI? Well, it gives you a syntax error because I have one equal sign. So if I add another equal sign, here we go. Machine learning is not equal to AI, two different words. So it gave you a false syntax. How about is machine learning equal to machine learning? Yes, it is. Machine learning is equal to machine learning, so it is true. Okay. You can also do logic operators. Okay, logic operators. And let's just do code and then do heading. Okay, do okay, and do that. What if I want to say 10 is bigger than 5? Okay, and I want to say 50 is bigger than 40. 50 is bigger than 40. So first off, 10 is bigger than 5 and 50 is bigger than 40, right? So it is going to result in a true output because both statements have an and in between. 10 is bigger than 5 and 50 is bigger than 40, then it's going to give you a true statement. So what if I say 10 is bigger than 20, which is not the case, and 50 is bigger than 40. 50 is bigger than 40. So we know 50 is bigger than 40, so that is true. But remember, I'm saying and, so both statements have to be true for it to result in a true. So that's why when you run this, since 10 is not bigger than 20, it's going to result in a false statement. Okay. So it is just one way of doing it. So if you want to make this to be true, what you can do, you can copy and paste this and put or in between. So if 50 is bigger than 40, if either this statement or this statement is true, make it true. So now when you run it, since 50 is bigger than 40, even though 10 is not bigger than 20, it still resulted in true. So you can do and, or you can use or. So last class, so this is just some of the fundamentals. I can go through the if statements and the for loops and all the other stuff, but I want to just cover the pandas a little bit, just to show you like pandas functionalities. Okay, so let's go over and say import. So last class we talked about NumPy. We talked about pandas. We talked about different visualization libraries. I'm just going to show you how to import these libraries. I'm just going to go through pandas like today, but I'm going to show you how to import different libraries. So you can do import NumPy as MP. If you run this, it basically imported the NumPy library that we discussed last time. You can do import pandas as PD. You can run this and it will import the pandas library. Import matplotlib.pyplot as PLT. It imported the matplotlib, if you remember the matplotlib library that we discussed last time. You can do %matplotlib inline. %matplotlib inline. So this line of code, it basically allows you to visualize the plots, within Jupyter Notebook. If you don't have this line of code, a lot of the plots won't show up. And so to make your plots show up, you put %matplotlib inline. Okay. You can do also import Seaborn as SNS. Run this. Now you imported the Seaborn. If you remember, Seaborn is the visualization library that we discussed last time. Is the Matplotlib was you have to. It allows you more customization with Seaborn. It's the you can write a line of code much faster. With one line of code, you can do different plots. Seaborn is actually one of my favorite libraries because you can do different plots very fast. So now let's go and say let's import. I have an Excel sheet that I created. So this Excel sheet is frac MCO data. So I pulled a stage from one of the public data sets, frac data sets. That MCO is a governmental project. I pulled just one stage just like for this class to illustrate. It's an Excel file. You can see here it's an XLSX file. It's an Excel file. I just wanted to show you how you can import an Excel into Python, into the Jupyter notebook, and look at the data. So with that, let's do Excel import. I'm going to highlight this and do heading, and then do OK. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to say, I'm going to call this, it's a data frame, right? It is basically an Excel formatted, data frame. So I want to say df is equal to PD, which is the pandas. So I said import pandas is PD. So I have PD dot read, and I'm going to put underscore. If you hit tab now, it gives you all the kinds of files that you can import. You can see here you can import a CSV file, Excel file, HTML, JSON. You can do SQL query, SQL table. You pretty much have everything that you need, like to import into. You can even do HTML from the internet. You can pretty much pull in anything that you want to here. So in this case, my file that I'm importing in is an Excel file. So I'm going to type in Excel. Okay, if it was CSV, I would have typed in CSV, right? But I'm going to type in Excel. So you can see here, pd.read Excel. The name of the file is, if you go back here, it's called frac MCO data. Okay, if I go back here, if I type in frac, it would auto, if I type in FR and hit tab, it would auto populate what it sees in that folder. Okay, so you can do, if I do shift enter now, so now it brought in this df Excel file. If I want to visualize, if I want to just look at the table, see what I brought in, I can just type in df, right? Df. Here we go. So you can see it has time, it has treating pressure, or TR pressure, or PRESS, and then it has treating rate, which is slurry rate. Then it has prop and concentration. Okay, so this is what when you type in df, it shows you the first 5 rows and the last 5 rows. So you can see here I have 8,084 rows by 4 columns. Okay, this is the file that you just brought in. So remember that without using pandas, so if I just, let's just do this actually. Let's just go ahead and comment out this file. So to comment out this file, to comment out this line of code here, import pandas as PD, you can do Control A, okay, which will select the whole thing for you. Then do Control question mark. Control question mark. It commented out this whole line of code. So as I said, Control, and then to uncomment it, you can do Control A again and Control question mark. Okay, so Control A, which selects the whole line, and then Control question mark, which comments it out. Let's run this. Okay, let's run this code, and do not import the pandas library. Okay, I want to run this code from scratch and not import the pandas library. I want to see if it runs or not. Okay, so I'm going to do kernel restart and run all, and restart and run all. So let's see what happens. Actually, it's going to give an error because remember this line of code here. Let me actually comment this out too, because I was trying to show you a tuple and like that it wouldn't work. So let me comment this out. So as soon as it encounters an error, it stops right there. That's actually good to know as well. So if you run it from top to bottom and it encounters an error, it's not going to run top to bottom. It's going to stop where the error is encountered. So I'm going to comment this out as well, because I already showed you how you cannot assign, how tuples does not support item assignments. So I'm going to do kernel restart and run all. So here we go. Name PD is not defined, and that's why I imported pandas as PD. So the reason why name PD is not defined is because it doesn't recognize that you've imported the library. So prior to using these functions like pd.read underscore excel csv, whatever you import, again, you first have to import library. So one of the first items that you do when you use Python is to import the libraries first and then use them. So if it says name PD is not defined, or the library, it doesn't recognize the library, first you have to go back and import the library prior to using it. So I'm going to actually bring this line of code here. I'm going to put it right above this. Import pandas as PD. There we go. Now when you run it, now it ran, because first you imported pandas as PD, and then you started using the pandas function, which is read function. If you do df, as I said, it shows you the first 5 rows, the last 5 rows. You might say, well, Haas, I'm just interested in the first 5 rows. Okay, you can do df, or let's say the first 3 rows, df.head. So this head function, what it does, it gives you the first. If you just do df.head, it just runs the first 5 rows. So indexing in Python starts with 0. So index 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, which means the first 5 rows of data. You can also put 3 here. It just shows you the first 3 rows of data. You can put 10. Shows you the first 10 rows of data. What if you say, Hans, I'm interested in seeing the last 20 rows of data? Well, do df.tail and change this to 20. Here we go. You can see the last 20 rows of data. Remember that the last row was 8080 or index 8083, and then these are the last 20 rows of data. So you can see your treating pressure, your slurry rate, your prop and concentration. Okay, what about the last 7 rows? Here we go. Here's the last 7 rows. Now, what if you want to do df dot, let's just say you want to get a basic statistics of these parameters. You can do df.describe and then hit shift enter. So it gives you each parameter, this function df.describe, which is very powerful. It gives you treating pressure, slurry rate, prop and concentration, and it gives you the count, how many rows of data were in there. Gives you the mean, which is the average, standard deviation for each parameter, min, 25 percentile, 50th percentile, and max. So it gives you all the basic statistics of every single parameter if you just do df.describe. If you don't like this format, you can always just do a dot transpose. Transpose. It would transpose. Here we go. It would transpose it for you. So it took this table, it took the main table. Let me actually do this. It took df.describe. It took this table here and transposed it. Now your treating pressure, slurry rate, and prop and concentration are here. Your count, mean, standard deviation are all up here. That's when you have a lot of parameters, so you can always transpose it to make it look nicer and better if you want to. What if you're interested in seeing the column names? Say if you want to do df.columns. It shows you time, treating pressure, slurry rate, and prop and concentration. So you have all the interested columns, all of the columns within your df that you define like above. And df stands for data frame. It's just you can name this anything. You can name this You can name this anything that you want to. This is just a name, I'm just using df just to say it's a data frame, You can say df1, df2. You can say python1, whatever you want to name it. It doesn't really matter. As long as you know what you named it and you start using it, then you can start using it. So now, what if you want to rearrange these? So here, as you can see here, you have time, treating pressure, slurry rate, and prop and concentration. What if you want to have this time column? What if you want to put this at the end? And instead of having it here, you're putting it at the end. So you can do this actually. So by the way, to get each column, you can do df. So you can do treating pressure, PRES, and it gives you only that column. Okay, you can get that column only if you want to. You can do, for example, slurry rate. Slur, you can always do hit the tab, slurry rate, and it gives you just that slurry rate column. So you can call each column that you're interested in. Let's just say you want to bring this time here, from the first row. So if I just do df here, if I do df, you have time, treating pressure, slurry rate, and prop and concentration. What if I want to arrange these columns and bring this time here and put it at the very end? I can actually simply do this. I can do df is equal to df. I'm going to do double brackets. What I'm going to do, these are my column names, right? Time, I'm going to copy and paste this here, put it here. Time is the first column. So what I want to do, I want to take this time column, Control X, and then bring it here, comma, put the time column at the end. Okay, so if I run this now, do df, here we go. Now you have your treating pressure, slurry rate, prop and concentration, and your time column was now shifted or moved from the first column to the last column. Or you can rearrange this however you would like to. So you can do all kinds of data manipulation, data rearrangements within Python. You don't have to go back to Excel and move columns. And as long as you understand the functions of what you're doing, you can just do all these data manipulation within Pandas. As if you remember, Pandas is basically an Excel version of Python. It's very powerful. A lot of functions are available readily for you. You can rename, you can do everything within Python here. So now let's go ahead and rename. Let's do, I want to say df. There's another, powerful function called rename. Rename. It's called, if you type in RE and hit tab, it gives you all kinds of functions, but I'm interested in rename. Let's just do rename. Now you put parentheses. If you go inside the parentheses and do shift tab, it gives you, let me actually do this real quick. Let me bring this to the, if you do shift tab, it gives you what needs to be passed on. Okay, so it gives you what needs to be passed on, and also it gives you definitions of every single thing here. See this? What in place is, which one to put in. It gives you a lot of good information. A lot of times, if you're not familiar with a function, even gives you an example at the end how you can do it. df.rename, here's an example. You can a lot of times just copy and paste that example that they give you within there. So you don't have to, if you don't memorize stuff, sometimes you can just, Google it, or even just do shift tab. Again, when you do shift tab, don't do the shift tab outside of this parentheses. If you do it here, it doesn't do it. Well, actually, sometimes it works, but usually just go inside the parentheses and do shift tab, and then just add the plus sign, and it would bring up all these, all this information about it. If you do shift tab, let's do shift tab 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you hit the shift tab 4 times, it would just bring up this whole page, makes it kind of a half page. So if I do shift tab 1 time, it brings up this page. Shift tab twice, expand it a little more. Shift tab 3 times, it added a little bit here, and then Shift Tab 4 times, it made this into an almost half a page within your Jupyter like notebook. So Shift Tab is a very important, keyword that you can use to figure out what you got to pass in inside this df.rename function. So you can do df.rename. Let's say I want to do columns, which is one of the arguments that I had to pass. If you go back to Shift Tab here, Shift Tab, see this columns is one of the arguments that has to be passed. I want to do columns. Which columns I want to adjust? I want to do squiggly bracket, and I'm going to do df.columns. I'm going to take column 0, which is the first column, right? Column 0. And I'm going to change that with treating pressure. Pressure. Okay. And then if I run this, so now it took column 0. If you remember, column 0 was TRPRESS. It renamed that column with treating pressure. So you rename column 0. Remember, indexing starts with 0 in Python. So column 0, which is treating pressure, and you replace that. It replaced the name of the column from TRPRESS with treating pressure. You can add more argument. You can do also. Let's just copy and paste this and do df. Actually, let's copy and paste from here on, because it has to be inside the squiggly bracket still, comma. I want to change column 1 now. Column 1, which is slurry rate. I want to just change it a little bit, call it slurry rate. Here we go. So it changed from SLUR rate to slurry rate. Okay. So now one thing that's important here, if you come down, if you run this, and then say, now if you just type in df, which is the original function, it went back to the original column names that you had. Why is that? Well, because when you define this rename function, you did not put in place is equal to true. So in place is equal to true makes the change permanent. Okay. If you do this and run this now, see now the changes that you've made, treating pressure and slurry rate, have become permanent. If you didn't have this in place is equal to true, it would, as soon as you run that line of code, you go to the next line of code, it would make the change, it would revert it back to its original form. So if you want to make the changes permanent, sometimes in Python, when you use these pandas function, make sure you use in place is equal to true. And that's just df.rename is one of the pandas functions. You can do other functions within pandas that also requires you to put in place is equal to true to make sure that those changes that you've made, stay within your data frame basically, and basically make those changes permanent as opposed to temporary. Okay. So now, what if you want to just add, different calculations? Let's just say you want to take this treating pressure here, and you want to divide it by 2, right? So I'm going to take df treating pressure. You can always do, by the way, do tab. See, it auto-complete it for you. df treating pressure is equal to df treating pressure. Okay. So you're taking this column, which is df bracket, and then you put in the column name inside the bracket. Then you divide it by 2. Here we go. So if you want to look at this column now, simply just type in, here's the column, paste it, here we go. Now you can see here, you see 614 as opposed to 1228. So if you take 1228 divided by 2, that gives you 614. If you take 1617 divided by 2, that gives you 808.5. So you basically took that column and then divided it by 2 and placed it inside and replaced it with df treating pressure. So if you do df, if you just do df now, these numbers, your treating pressure column numbers, were cut in half now because you divided those by 2. What if you want to add another calculated column? What if you want to say, I want to add another column, and let's just say you say, I want to divide treating pressure, and I want to take that and divide it by slurry rate. So you can do df treating pressure, okay, and then you can do df treating pressure divided by slurry rate. That's the name of the column that you're trying to give it, slurry rate. And then you can do df treating pressure, type it in, pressure, and then divided by df treating rate, right? Or I'm sorry, it's actually called slurry rate. Slurry rate, that's what it's called in the name. So now we added a column called df treating pressure over slurry rate to my df table. So if I do df now, see, now we added another column called df treating pressure divided by slurry rate, in addition to all the other ones that you had. So if you want to create a new column, simply just type in the name of your data frame. In this case, I just call it df for simplicity, and then pass in the name that you want to, the name of the column that you're trying to add. Then pass in what you're trying to do. This column divided by this column. You can do basic functions. You can do df. I want to say df, let's just say treating pressure times 2. Okay, treating pressure times 2. You can do df treating pressure, and you can do times 2. So if you look at df treating pressure times 2 now, actually, if you just do df now, look at df now, see, you added another one, df treating pressure times 2. So you have treating pressure times 2, treating pressure times 2. So you can do basic, functions within Python very easily. And you can also do the different functions. Let's just say if you're interested in df treating pressure, and if you're interested in the min, type in min. It gives you the minimum treating pressure that it found within your treating pressure column. You can use max, you can use standard deviation, STD. You can do all kinds of different functions. You can do count, I believe. You can do mean, and so on and so forth, right? And so on and so forth. So basically, this was an introduction, to machine learning. How to use Python. The first 3 lectures, we went through all the machine learning fundamentals, all the, I covered 2 different algorithms, ANN and K-means clustering, just to give you guys some perspective. And this last lecture, I wanted to go over Python and how you set it up, how you have the database, how to get started with basic functions, So this is basically, the time is up, and I wanted to answer a few of the questions. I got a few questions on my LinkedIn. So I wanted to first answer those questions. Let me pull up my LinkedIn here, messages that I got. Let me see. So the question that I've received on my LinkedIn, as I said, feel free. I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free if you have any questions, just send me a message. I'll try. Just give me a few days. I'm very busy. I'll try to answer your questions as soon as I can. But in this case, I got a list of questions and I thought I could share with everybody else. So the first question is, I did not really get the idea on how using predefined specific models, algorithms, without needing to rebuild our own programs or even trying to bring some modifications to those models. So these algorithms that I was talking about, you can use a library called scikit-learn. And scikit-learn, what they've done, they've basically taken your your ANN model, your support vector machine model, your k-means clustering model, and summarize it into a few lines of code. Okay, as opposed to writing everything from scratch. Okay, you can use a scikit-learn library to import those like algorithms. You still have to optimize the parameters, and you still have to optimize the hyperparameters. Okay, the hyperparameters, for example, how many neurons you're going to need, what kind of activation function to use, what kind of solver to use, and so on. And so you still have to use either grid search or whatever you're going to use to optimize those hyperparameters. But the coding, as far as the coding itself goes, these codings have been summarized into a few lines of code that you can run much faster. You're welcome to build the codes from scratch yourself. There's you have Python, you have all the tools in your hand to do that. And some people do it. Actually, I recommend, if you want to do that, you're more than welcome to do so. But these pre-built libraries have already been been verified, and everybody's using those. Like a lot of the big corporations, rely on these libraries to run their machine learning models. So to make it simpler for you, that's the beauty of Python, that a lot of these stuff have been summarized, in these libraries. For example, Pandas is one library. You can use Pandas to do different analysis quicker. If I didn't use Pandas, to rename these column names and all those things might take me some longer time. But that's the beauty of using these libraries to make your job simpler. And that's the whole point of using Python, to make this much easier and much faster, as opposed to coding everything from very, very scratch. So I hope this makes sense. That was the first question. The next question is, how did you get the reference biases and weights on the first ANN example? The ANN example that I showed you in lecture 2, those were just an example. I ran a model one time on a weekend just to get some weights and biases for a model that I prepared. It was I ran the model based on some generic data set, just to show in class how you can do it by hand. And then I solved the problem by hand, and then I showed it to you in class. So those were just after a model has, as I said in the class, those weights and biases that I used in lecture 2, those were after a model has been trained. So I trained just a random model on a generic data set, and I just grabbed those weights and biases, and I just created a table. And those were the weights and biases that we also use in the book, in the hydraulic fracturing book, chapter 24. So I was trying to just show you, the mathematical matrix multiplication and how you go through the process, just to make it simple for you. So these were not, these weights and biases would be provided to you basically. Once your model is trained, these weights and biases would be obtained from the trained model, basically. Now, the next question, in the k-means clustering, how are the centroids selected on the very beginning? So as I said, you can start these centroids randomly. Okay, you can start these and actually in Python you can do random centroid, starting these like centroids randomly, or you can use other techniques like k-means plus within Python to, for example, say I want these centroids to be as far away from each other as possible for the best optimal result. So you can, in the example that I showed you in class, those were just started randomly, just for the illustration purpose. But you can use other types of techniques to actually not randomly select those centroids and use other techniques such as k-means plus, for example, within Python's scikit-learn to actually make sure these centroids are as far away from each other as possible. So that's the answer to that question. I believe that was the last question that I got. Yeah, k-means clustering. So as far as the applications within the oil and gas industry, there are, the last question was, what are some of the applications in the oil and gas industry? I think I've covered some of them in class. You can use machine learning for hydraulic fracturing optimization. You can use machine learning for predictive maintenance. For example, predictive maintenance is a huge deal actually these days. You can use machine learning for plunger lift optimization. You can use machine learning for creating synthetic logs, for estimating, predicting geomechanical properties of a log. You can use deep learning for seismic interpretation. You can use machine learning for optimizing your rate of penetration during drilling. You can use machine learning to optimize your EUR, your cume per foot. There are different applications, really, so many different applications, and all of that goes back to domain expertise. But if you just go on one Petro and type in, machine learning in the past couple of years, there are so many papers on this very topic, on different applications of machine learning. But I just gave you some examples here. And actually, in the book that we published, we have 15 different applications of how you can apply different applications of using different machine learning techniques in the oil and gas industry. There are 15 different examples that we have that you can follow step by step. So that should also be a good guide. And then finally, as I said, it was a pleasure to teach this class. I hope you guys learned something from this class, and some of the materials you might not get the first time when you go through it. Just watch it 2 or 3 times. A lot of these videos are, I spent a lot of time creating those just to. One of my passions is teaching. So, I just create these videos so somebody can really benefit from these. So watch the videos 2 or 3 times. As I said, I'm on LinkedIn. If you have any questions, just simply send me an email or simply send me a LinkedIn message. I'll try to get back to you. Also, I have a lot of these people coming in on the podcast and talk about the future of AI and machine learning and automation in the oil and gas industry. So tune into the channel. It's this Observelligence channel on YouTube. Again, these are all free educational videos that I post on the YouTube channel for your reference. So feel free to subscribe to the channel and just learn from different experts, not just me, from different experts that have been in the industry for a very long time. They have done a lot of cool stuff. So with that being said, again, thank you. And I'll take any questions you guys might have now.
Thank you, Mr. Haas. It was a great session as usual. It was a pleasure to have you this month, and we hope to meet you again with other courses. And thank you all. You already answered all the questions, and we don't have any other questions. So thank you again, and thank you all. The session will be uploaded to Biometry YouTube channel, and don't forget to solve the quiz on Google Classroom. And a quick reminder, the final exam will be this Wednesday, December 2nd. As usual, we have 3 exams. First at 2 p.m., second at 8 p.m., and the third at 2 a.m. next day, all in Egypt time. And please take one exam. Best of luck, and thank you again.
Thank you.